So when I'm on campus, I'm at the Henderson campus typically. And so you can access our services now for almost the past year virtually. Um, we also have Joy Lamb, one of our administrative assistants, and I believe that Ruth is on this call as well, another administrative assistant in our program. All right, so this presentation is titled Coyote Success Seminars, the Resume Revamp. So we'll be discussing the resumes and how to revamp them. All right, we go to the next one. So basically, we all suggested that you have a resume, no matter what type of field you're in. Even if you don't think that you need a resume, it's always good to have a resume handy and ready to email or hand out to someone at a moment's notice. So we always suggest that you have some type of resume ready. So these are the things that we're going to cover today. The purpose of a resume, why do we even need one? And like I just said, we suggest that everyone have one. The different types of resumes, we're going to go over 3 different types of resumes. Resume do's and don'ts. So things that you should have on your resume and some things that you should not have on your resume. A lot of times people, they have a resume, they think it's really good, they're sending it out and they're not getting the response that they want. And so there may be some things that you have on your resume that you shouldn't have on your resume. We're going to go over some resume review statistics. We'll talk about some tips and tricks that, just some tips that you should have on your resume, and then some different tricks to get your resume seen a little bit more when it's going through the process. And then if you can hold your questions to the end, you're welcome to at any point to put your questions in the chat box, and then we'll answer all the questions at the end of the presentation, if that's okay. All right, what is a resume? A resume is a written explanation of your education, work experience, credentials, and accomplishments. Its purpose is to introduce yourself to employers. So in lieu of yourself being there in person, your resume is going to be there to speak for you. So that's why we use it to introduce ourselves to employers. Share your qualifications and secure the interview. So that's the ultimate goal, is to get the interview at the end. So if your resume can do all that, you've done a good job, and that's you've actually reached your goal of submitting your resume to someone. All right. What's the goal? To capture the eye of the recruiter. So typically, recruiters are going to get hundreds of resumes, and so what will make yours stand out? So we want to make sure that our resumes are standing out, and so we're going to give you some tips to make it stand out. Depending on the industry, you can use color and things like that to make it stand out a little bit more. Me personally, I don't care for all the different colors. If you do decide to use colors in your resume in an attempt to stand out, you want to try to go with the conservative colors like a gray or a blue. But my personal opinion is just black and white is the best. And have a nice resume paper with you, or if you're sending it through email, then that's what you should do. You should probably try to stay away from really wild fonts where it's really difficult to read your resume. You want to go with something that's pretty nice in a font where it's clear and the person can read it. and we'll talk about that later, why that is. You want to maintain a standardized format. So there's a million formats of resumes out there, but you want to kind of stay with the ones that the HR departments are the most familiar with. So you don't want to do too much that's outlandish in attempt to get your resume noticed, because what happens that time sometimes is that you get screened out because you're too over the top. Now that does depend on the industry. If you're in an entertainment industry, those things might be a good thing because you want to stand out if you're in some type of entertainment industry. But if you're in some type of professional field where you're going to try to obtain a professional job, you want to try to keep it as conservative as you can, yet still trying to be captivating. And so you want to keep it simple and captivating as possible. All right, so these are the types of resumes that we'll go over. We have the reverse chronological resume, which is the one that I typically use. And we'll talk about the differences between these three. But you have the reverse chronological resume, you have the functional skills-based resume, and you have the combination hybrid resume, which is a combination of those two, the reverse and the functional skills-based resume. All right, so the reverse chronological resume. So this is a resume, like I said, that I personally use this one. And typically most people use the chronological resume, reverse chronological resume. They call it the reverse chronological resume because you're going to list your most recent job or work experience first, and then you're going to go back in time. Typically, you want to go back no further than 10 years in your work experience. So that's the reverse chronological. That's why they name it that. So we're going reverse back in time. So you're going to go with most recent down to least recent 10 years about. It's going to help recruiters spot all of the relevant information quickly. Because most people use this resume, recruiters are most ready and able to recognize the information because typically people use this format. So they're accustomed to using this, getting these type of resumes and using them. It's a simple format that focuses on the key work experience. So this is one of the good things about the reverse chronological resume, is that it focuses in on your work experience. So if you're heavy in work experience that's related to the job you're trying to get, this will be a good thing for you to use a reverse chronological resume. All right. What should be included in a reverse chronological resume? So obviously your contact information. So with the contact information, like I said, I typically make my name a little bit bigger. What you also need to put in your contact information, and this one is kind of starting to go away. On mine, I have my address, but this is something that's going to be an optional thing for you nowadays. You don't necessarily need to put your actual physical address on your resume. You do want to put your contact information, meaning you want to put a phone number. People don't have home phones as much as they used to. You want to put a phone number that you typically will answer. And if you don't answer it, make sure that your voicemail is professional. You also want to put your email address, because this is the typical way that an employer will contact you, through email or they'll call you. And while you're job searching, you want to make sure that when you answer your phone, that you answer it professionally. You don't want to answer the phone saying "what up" or anything like that when it could be an employer. So just be careful with that. You'll also list your skills on there. So your skills could be anything from your computer skills, your typing skills. A lot of people that are bilingual leave this skill off of their resume. So make sure that if you are bilingual, speak a couple different languages or even more, trilingual or whatever, you want to list that you're bilingual and then list the languages that you speak. A lot of times people leave this off thinking that that's not a skill that's very marketable, and it is. So you want to make sure you do that. Any computer skills that you have, if you know Microsoft Office and all the different products it has with it, you want to list those as well. The ones that you know how to use very well, you want to make sure that you list that stuff. You also want to have a resume summary or a resume objective. And so what a resume objective is, or a career objective is what I typically call it. It's basically what your specific job that you're applying for, you want to list this in your career objective. So you want to tailor it towards every job. So you want to get 1 or 2 good resumes, and then according to who you're applying to, you want to tailor that career objective or that resume objective to that specific job. So you want to list that in the objective somewhere. Obviously, you're going to have your work experience. Again, we want to go with most recent first, and then you're going to go back in time 10 years, if you have 10 years of experience. And then you definitely want to list your education, and the same thing will go with the education. You're going to list your most recent education first, and then you're going to go back in time with that. With the education, if you're in college, as all of you are, it is, this one is kind of controversial, but I like it for the sake of saving space on your resume. If you're in college, it's not really a need to list your high school anymore. It is assumed that if you're in college, that your high school, that you did graduate from high school. Now, if you did get some really cool or neat honors in high school, you could list those in an accomplishment area or category, but it's not necessary to list your high school education anymore, because if you're in college, it's assumed that you graduated from high school. Now, with all this said, and I should have said this from the beginning, your resume is your resume. So just because I said it's not necessary for you to list your high school, if you want to list your high school, that's perfectly fine, because it is your resume, it's not my resume. This is just something I suggest, and especially for the sake of space, you don't necessarily need that, because we assume that you have your high school education. All right, thank you. So these are some pros and cons of the reverse chronological resume. One of the pros, as I mentioned before, recruiters are familiar with this format of a resume. They will automatically know where the information is and that what the information you sent is complete. It's guaranteed to go through the applicant tracking software resume test. For those of you that don't know what this is, the acronym is ATS. Now, a lot of HR or human resources departments, they have this tracking software. So this is the first thing that they'll do, is they'll scan your resume through their tracking software. And so what they're looking for is keywords that will match with their job description. So this is one of the suggestions that I have, is that you want to look at their job description and use the words that they use in their job description on your resume, so that you can get through this scanning process, because this is scanned by a computer. And if you don't have enough of the keywords that they're looking for, your resume is going to be screened out of the process. And that's not what we want. We want it to be screened into the rest of the process. So you want to go to the job description, and maybe on your resume you've done data entry, but on their job description they're asking for 10 key. What you need to do, instead of putting data entry, you may want to put 10 key on your resume so that it gets screened in. That's one of the keywords. You're hitting one of the keywords that they're looking for in that computer program. so that your resume gets screened in. That's just an example. Also, this format highlights the peak of your career. So because everything's in reverse chronological order, you're typically your best jobs, you've moved up, so on and so forth, to the point where you're at the peak of your career. That's going to be the first thing they're going to see on your resume, chronological resume, is if you have large gaps in your work history. Recruiters will notice this because you're going to be listing your dates in your work experience. So this will be something that they'll notice, the large gaps in your work history. Now, this can be a good thing or a bad thing. If you do have large gaps in your work history, you can still try to use this type of resume as long as you have a good answer for why you have that large gap in your work history. Now, if you don't have a good answer, then it might be we have some other resumes that might fit your needs a little bit better. But just know that the recruiters are going to notice the gaps in your work history. So if you took off to take care of your ailing parent or you had a child or something like that, and you have a good, I shouldn't say excuse, but a good reason why there's a work history gap, then that's fine if you can explain that. And you need to somehow show that on your resume. And another con is that it's not an ideal format for career changers. So if you're a type of person that jump from job to job, or you change different careers in your time, then this might not be the best format for you. Example of a reverse chronological resume, you can go to Resume Genius and look for, they have several different templates in there. The chronological resume, they have templates in there. So you can just go to Resume Genius, Google Resume Genius, you can get in there and then you can get chronological resumes and get examples of it. Yeah, so that's some examples of the chronological resume. Very good. All right, so now we're moving on to the next style of resume, is the functional skill-based resume. So this resume is good for someone if you do have those work gaps in your resume, the work history gaps. This might be a better resume for you. This type of resume focuses on your skills and abilities. So also, not only if you just have work history gaps, but if you have a lot of skills, you know how to do a lot of different things, this might be a good resume for you because it's going to be able to emphasize those things that you're good at. And it's going to take the pressure off of your work experience. So this is a good type of resume. I don't use it very much, but it is a good way to highlight your skills. If you just know how to do a lot of different things, you know a lot of computer programs, or if you know a lot of different skills, you have a lot of certificates and trainings, this might be a good resume for you. All right, so the same thing should be included on this as you would have on your other ones. So your contact information will be similar. Like I said before, I typically make my name a little bit bigger. You definitely want to include your email address. You want to include your phone number, one that you're going to answer, and have a professional voicemail. Also, I'll talk about this a little bit later. You also, if you have a LinkedIn, and we also suggest that you have a LinkedIn account, you should have that link included in your contact information also. So those things you can list instead of putting your physical address anymore. Your resume summary, so this is your career objective or your resume objective. You want to list the specific types of jobs that you are interested in and why you're interested in. On this type of resume, you want to have a skills summary. So your skills summary is just going to list all of the different skills that you have specifically, and hopefully you can tie them to the job that you are applying for. So If you have active listening skills, you have communication skills, computer skills, these type of things, customer service skills are very important to just about any type of job. Even my job, your customer service skills are very important. Your communication skills, your interpersonal skills, the ability to interact with other people. Typically you're going to be working in a team in just about every job that you have. Very seldom will you be working by yourself in a job nowadays. So those interpersonal skills are very valuable in what you can bring to a team environment. So that's something that you want to list on there, that you can work in different team environments. And so the ability to have that skill is very important. Any leadership skills you have, you want to list those. Management skills, problem solving skills, these are things that you want to make sure that you're listing in that skills summary. And any additional skills, accomplishments, certificates that you've earned, trainings that you went through, all of that stuff should be listed. So if you went through some type of networking training, if you're going to be some type of cybersecurity or networking person, you want to list all of those different trainings that you have and all of the skills that you have. And again, don't downplay your bilingual skills or your linguistic skills, because this is very important to a lot of people. Also, you'll list your work experience, but maybe you don't put your dates on there, or maybe you just put the month and year. And then your education. You want to make sure that you're listing your education, and hopefully your education will coincide to the types of jobs that you're applying for. All right, so the pros and cons for this type of resume: it takes the focus off of your work history and places it on your skills. So we're taking emphasis off of your work experience. Maybe you have those work history gaps. It's going to put more of the focus on what you can do, which are your skills and your certificates and your trainings that you have. So that's one of the good things for this one. It's also a good creative resume format for non-traditional industries. So if you're applying for some type of job in the entertainment industry, this might be a good resume for you also, because that's a non-traditional industry. And so work history, meaning the dates, that might not be as important as what you've done in your work history. So that would be something that you would highlight in your skills. One of the cons of this one is that it's very likely to fail that ARTS resume scan. So that system that's looking for those keywords, it's probably not going to go through that scan and do very well, because you're not listing things that are on their job description, because you're probably applying for non-traditional jobs. So that's just one of the cons of this type of resume. You can still try to get the job description if you're applying for some type of job and try to list some of the keywords they have in there, but this is just one of the cons of that. It's an instant red flag suggesting that you're trying to hide something. So if you do use the functional resume, just do it with caution, because this might be a red flag to a seasoned HR professional, that they're thinking that, oh, well, maybe this person is trying to hide something. So just know that that might be the case. You can get some examples of a functional skill-based resume at this website we have shown there, Resume Genius. All right, and then the last type of resume that we'll talk about is the combination hybrid resume. So now this resume is a combination of the two that we have. So it combines the elements of a chronological resume, where we're listing the dates in reverse order, and a functional resume that has a lot of your skills and the things you can do on your resume. And so on what should be included on this one, simple, same things, your contact information, your summary of skills, and the main focus. So the main focus of what you're applying for, you should put that in this summary of skills area. So listing of those skills again. Your additional skills, any certificates, accomplishments, anything that will bode well for you that you want them to see, you want to put that in this area also, in your skills area. Your work experience, you want to list your work experience. This might be a situation where you do or don't put the dates necessarily, but just it's going to be more important of where you have worked more so than the dates. So that's going to be important. And then obviously your education, where you received your education from. You're going to list where you received your education. If you're still in progress, you're going to put the dates of when you started, and you can put to present. And then if you're in the middle of your education, and then you want to list definitely the degree you're planning to get. You want to list that as well. So the pros and cons of this type of resume, it showcases your most important skills and validates them with examples related to your work experience. So that's one of the good things about the hybrid one. It's gonna highlight your skills, and it's gonna relate it right to your work experience. So that's a good thing that it offers as well. A good format for people with gaps in their resume but have many years of relevant work experience. So again, you might not list the dates of when you did those particular jobs that relate to the job you're applying for, but if you have experience in that area, you're going to put that on your resume. And so one of the things that you can do, if you're not listing the dates, but you're listing the company name, you want to make sure that you're listing those that go directly towards the job that you're applying for. It's also one of the cons. It's one of the most difficult resume formats to create properly. So this is because it's a combination between the two, it's not an easy format to utilize, but it can be done. It's also suitable for very few candidates. So most people don't use this format. Number one, because it's hard to create and do it the right way. But only people with a lot of work experience targeting very specific positions. So if you have a very specific position, this might be a format for you. But again, you got to use this one with extreme caution because not everybody can pull it off. An example of the combination hybrid resume, will this one pull up? All right, so you can see the combination resume there. Contact details, resume introduction, experience, skills, and education, just like I mentioned. And there's examples of that. So I'm not sure, will they be able to come back and get to those different links? If not, if you can put the resume genius in the chat area, that will be good, that they can click on that and they'll know how to get to those different resumes that we spoke about. Here's some things that you definitely should do when compiling a resume. You definitely want to highlight your relevant experience. Use data to share your accomplishments. So what this means is if you have any numbers, say you're in sales and you sold 20 cars in a month, and that's a lot of cars to say. You want to put on your resume, sold 20 cars per month earned Employee of the Month 12 times or what have you. But if you can show data that will relate to the job you're applying for, that's going to bode well for you. Or if you have managed 13 employees or what have you, and your department increased their productivity because of your management of those employees, that data can show that you've done something good, and it can relate to the job you're applying for. So you want to use data or numbers. If you have good data, you want to use those and use those accomplishments to put on your resume, and that'll bode well for you as well also. You want to consider your volunteer information. This is something that a lot of people leave off of their resume because they don't view this as work experience just because you weren't paid for it. But I dare say that you're getting just as much experience if you're volunteering somewhere. You're getting some type of skill, you're learning something else, and it is experience. Just because you're not getting paid for it, it is experience. So don't forget to put your voluntary experience on your resume as well. Just because you're not getting paid for it does not mean that it's not good experience. And also, if you can show that you've moved up in a particular organization, this is something that you want to show. You want to show the progression of the different jobs that you had at one organization or different responsibilities that you had. That's going to bode well for you as well. Employers like to see that you progressed in your career, or in different companies, or in the same company, or different companies. If you progress, you want to definitely show that on your resume. Don'ts. You do not want to include random hobbies on your resume. So this may be your hobbies. Maybe will come up in an interview where maybe it's appropriate if they ask you, about your hobbies or something like that. But this is nothing that you need to put on your resume. So you want to, if you collect, bunny rabbits or what have you, I don't know what your hobbies are, but if you have a random hobby, you don't need to put that on your resume. Now, if it comes up in conversation in your interview, then so be it, but not on your resume. Because again, we're trying to get our resume screened into the process, not out of the process. And that might be something that screens your resume out of the process. Don't hide your employment gaps, be honest with them. So you can go with the functional resume or the hybrid. You want to put, list your work experience. Don't try to hide. Don't try to be deceptive with this. You need to be as honest as you can with this. Don't create anything or a place that you worked and you really didn't work there. It always comes to light somehow. Please don't use slang words on your resume, like lit. I don't know a lot of slang words, but you don't want to put that on your resume, or cliche words. You want to stay away from that. Always thinking conservative and professional when you're writing your resume. Include references upon request. This is something that I see a lot of times. People include their references right on their resume. This is not appropriate. You want to put at the very bottom of your resume, references upon request. Now, if you are listing your references on your resume, take them off and put that on a separate sheet of paper. Because if you're sending out your resume, and you might send your resume out to 10, 15, 20 people. If your references are listed on there, that recruiter has a right to call those references because you sent them to them. So just imagine your references being called by 15 to 30 people just because you're sending your references out on your resume. So you don't want to do that. You want to create a separate reference list sheet that you can give to your employer when they ask for them. That's a better way of going about it. And with your references, you want to make sure that you're telling your references that, hey, I'm looking for a job. I'm gonna, can I use you as a reference, number one? And, please, you might even go and tell them the types of skills that you have and making sure that they're answering all the questions the right way. So you want to kind of prepare your references, making sure that they're answering the phone and that they're saying the right and appropriate things about you. So you want to let them know. But that should be on a separate sheet of paper that you'll have ready, that you'll take with you to your interview, or if they ask for your references, you can send that to them. And don't make your resume too long. This is going to be something that will get your resume screened out. You don't want to make it too long. Typically, the rule used to be, your resume should be just one page, because a lot of recruiters, they get up to 200, 250 resumes, and so they don't have time to read your entire bio. So, that was the typical rule, to just try to keep it to one page. But it's almost impossible nowadays to have a one-page resume. I don't think that you should go past 2 pages unless you just have a lot of skills and experience that you want to highlight. The danger in that is that it might not get read. So just keep that in mind. So if your resume is too long, all of those great things, they might not read those on your resume. So some of those things, maybe you save them for the interview, but you want to have your resume at a nice length, 1 page or 2 pages. If you're going to 3 pages, just be careful. And again, this is your resume. You can do what you like with it because it is your resume, but just be careful if you're going past 2 pages. Just knowing that that stuff that's on that 3rd page might not get looked at. Here's some stats for you as far as resume writing. And so I just kind of addressed this a little bit. Recruiters only spend about 3 minutes reviewing your resume. So imagine that, 3 minutes. So if your resume is too long, like I said before, they're not going to read all of your information if it's too long. 1 in 5 recruiters will actually reject a candidate before they even finish reading their resume. So you want to make sure that the most pertinent information is at the top of your resume, because it might not get read if it's at the bottom. So you want to be careful with that as well. On average, each corporate job attracts about 250 resumes. Just imagine that. That's 250 resumes that they have to go through. So that's why they have those scanning machines to kind of screen them out from the initial stages. And then from those candidates, 4 to 6 will get called in for an interview. So out of 250, 4 to 6 will get called in for an interview. So, you definitely have to have resume that's pertinent to that job. And then also, have a lot of luck and have an appealing resume that's going to get looked at and it reads well and hopefully gets you screened in to be one of the 4 to 6 people. And only one person will get the job. So just be cognizant of that. You can go from 250 resumes down to you're the person that gets the job. Some resume tips and tricks. Understand the role of your resume in the hiring process, which again, your goal of your resume is to hopefully get you to that interview. That way you can adequately explain your work experience, your skills, your education in person. So you got to understand that. You want to narrow down your target job market. So what this means is don't apply for any and everything. You really want to apply for jobs, because a lot of people think, okay, it's a numbers game, and it is to a certain extent. But if you're applying for jobs that you're truly interested in, you're going to do a lot better. Jobs that you're interested in and jobs you're qualified for. So you want to narrow your market. So this, a lot of people think, oh, well, I'll just apply for everything, and you're not going to get good results in that way. If you narrow your job market to jobs that you're very interested in, and jobs that you're majority qualified for, there will be no job that you're 100% qualified for. But if you're mostly qualified for that job, you're going to have a better chance of getting to the interview with your resume. So that's why you want to narrow down your targets. Use your color strategically and conservatively. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier. This is just my personal thing. I like black and white, but again, try to think conservative. So nice gray like they have on this resume shown in the picture, that's good. I would say try to stay away from some of like the highlighter colors. I would stay away from that. So just think conservative when you're doing your resume. Me personally, I wouldn't use like a red or a purple, even though those are your favorite colors. Again, you want to think conservative. So to me, blue, gray, black and white would be conservative to me. Now, again, this is your resume, and you're welcome to use those other colors. I'm just saying this with me personally, I wouldn't go past those colors. So just be careful with that, because again, you could get screened out if you're too colorful with your resume. And also, again, this does depend on the industry that you're applying for. Like I said, if you're in the entertainment industry, maybe you can use a little bit more color. If you're applying for a graphic design job, maybe you're going to use more color than you would just another type of resume. So depending on your industry, but use that strategically and conservatively. Include your LinkedIn profile link. So I mentioned earlier in your contact information, you want to include your LinkedIn profile link. So we also suggest that everybody have a LinkedIn link or profile that lists all of your education, it lists all of your skills. The good thing about LinkedIn is that people can endorse your skills. So people that you have that are networked into your LinkedIn can endorse you and also kind of say that you do indeed have that skill. So that's a good thing to do. And so if you have a good LinkedIn account, employers can look at that as well. Know the company's mission. Make your experience easy to skim by using those keywords. So again, make sure you look at their job description and then go and use those same keywords in your resume. So thank you all for coming to this workshop. I appreciate all of your attention. Again, contact us through our website and our email address. Thank you very much, everybody.